The massive space station gleamed against the black void of space. It was bigger than Earth's moon and home to thousands of different alien species. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewing deck of her small human ship, watching the enormous structure grow larger as they approached. This was the Galactic Council's main headquarters, and today would change everything for humanity. Sarah had been chosen to represent Earth because she was calm under pressure and good at talking to people. But as she looked at the alien station, she felt nervous. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. They were babies compared to the ancient civilizations that made up the Galactic Council. "Captain, we're getting a message from the station," said Lieutenant Jake Morrison from the communications console. "They want us to dock at Bay 17. "Take us in slowly," Sarah replied. "Let's not give them any reason to think we're aggressive." The docking process took an hour. Human technology was clunky compared to what they saw around them. Sleek alien ships moved through space like dancers, while the human vessel looked like a metal brick with engines attached. But it worked. And that was what mattered. When they finally entered the station, Sarah was amazed by what she saw. The corridors were huge, designed to accommodate beings of all sizes. Some aliens walked on 2 legs like humans, while others slithered, crawled, or floated through the air. The walls showed beautiful art from 1,000 different worlds, and soft music played that somehow sounded good to many different types of ears. A tall, thin alien approached their group. Its skin was pale blue, and it had 4 arms and large black eyes. "Greetings, humans," it said in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Zeth Kalar of the Vorthak Collective. I will escort you to the council chamber." Sarah bowed politely. "Thank you, Ambassador. We are honored to be here." As they walked through the station, Zeth Kalar explained the rules. "The Galactic Council has maintained peace for over 50,000 years. We have 847 member species, all living in harmony. Violence is almost unknown. In our space." "That's impressive," Sarah said. "How do you handle disagreements?" "Through discussion and compromise," Zeth Kalar replied. "We have found that most conflicts can be solved with patience and understanding." They entered the council chamber, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The room was enormous, with thousands of seats arranged in circles around a central platform. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the seats. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that Sarah couldn't figure out which end was their head. A deep voice echoed through the chamber. "The council recognizes the human delegation." Sarah walked to the central platform, feeling very small. All around her, alien eyes watched her every move. Some looked curious, others seemed worried, and a few appeared openly hostile. "Humans of Earth," the voice continued, "you have achieved faster-than-light travel and seek to join our council. This is a great honor, but also a great responsibility." Sarah spoke into the microphone. "We are grateful for this opportunity. Humanity wishes to learn from your wisdom and contribute to galactic peace." A murmur went through the crowd. Then Zeth Kalar stood up. "Before we proceed, the council must discuss some concerns about your species." A holographic display appeared, showing images from Earth's history. Sarah saw wars, weapons, and destruction. The images showed humans fighting each other throughout their history. "Your species has a troubling record," Zeth Kalar said. "In your brief existence, you have fought over 3,000 wars. You have weapons that can destroy your entire planet. You show levels of aggression that concern us greatly." Another alien stood up. This one looked like a giant insect with beautiful colored wings. "The Zephyrian Hive has studied human psychology. Your species shows what you call stubborn resilience in the face of impossible odds. While this might seem positive, it also means you rarely know when to surrender." "Furthermore," added a third alien that looked like a walking tree, "humans show unprecedented adaptability. You change your tactics and technology faster than any species we have seen. This unpredictability makes you dangerous." Sarah felt heat rising in her cheeks, but she kept her voice calm. "Yes, we have fought wars. Yes, we have weapons. But we also have art, music, and love. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We never give up when fighting for what is right. That is exactly what worries us, Zethkalar said. Your species sees everything in terms of conflict. You even use war metaphors when talking about peace. You fight against disease. You battle poverty. You conquer scientific problems. The council chamber buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages. Finally, the deep voice spoke again. The council has prepared the behavioral compliance accords. These are rules that humanity must follow if you wish to join us. A document appeared on Sarah's tablet. As she read it, her heart sank. The rules were harsh. Humanity could only colonize 10 planets. They had to limit their military to defensive weapons only. They could not research certain technologies. They could not expand beyond a small section of space without council permission. These rules are very limiting, Sarah said carefully. My people value freedom and exploration. And that is precisely the problem, Zethkalar replied. Your people value those things more than peace and stability. We have protocols for dangerous species. Either you accept these limits, or you remain isolated in your small corner of space. Sarah looked around the chamber. She saw fear in many of the alien faces. They were genuinely afraid of what humanity might do if left unchecked. These beings had lived in peace for thousands of years. The idea of war was foreign and terrifying to them. But Sarah also saw something else. She saw softness. These aliens had been safe for so long that they had forgotten what real danger looked like. They thought humanity was the biggest threat in the galaxy, but they had never faced anything truly evil. I need to discuss this with my government, Sarah said. Of course, the deep voice replied. You have 1 week to decide. Later, in the privacy of their ship, Sarah met with her team. What do you think? She asked. Lieutenant Morrison shook his head. They're treating us like children, or like dangerous animals that need to be caged. Maybe they have a point, said Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission scientist. Look at our history from their perspective. We probably do seem scary. But we're not monsters, Sarah said. We fight when we have to, but we also know when to make peace. The question is, said Commander Rick Torres, the military advisor, what happens if we say no? Sarah stared out at the alien station. Then we stay alone in our corner of space, and maybe that's not such a bad thing for now. Over the next few days, Sarah watched the station's daily life. She saw how the different species worked together. There was no crime, no violence, no conflict. It was like a perfect dream of peace. But Sarah also noticed that the aliens seemed unprepared for real problems. Their security was minimal. Their ships were designed for exploration and trade, not defense. Their whole civilization was built on the assumption that everyone would be reasonable and peaceful. On the last day, Sarah stood before the council again. Humanity accepts the behavioral compliance accords, she said. We will follow your rules and learn from your example. The chamber erupted in relieved chatter. Zethkalar smiled, which looked strange on his alien features. Welcome to the Galactic Council, humans of Earth. As Sarah signed the documents, she made a mental note. The council was right about one thing. Humans were different. They were tougher, more adaptable, more willing to fight when necessary. The aliens saw this as a weakness, but Sarah wondered if someday it might be exactly what the galaxy needed. She just hoped that day would never come. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in the zero-gravity lab of the Council research ship Harmony of Spheres, studying samples from a newly discovered planet. She was one of only 5 humans allowed to work on Council vessels, and she treasured the opportunity to learn from alien science. The ship was beautiful inside, with curved walls that glowed softly and provided perfect lighting for any species. Elena worked alongside Dr. Kethmora, a 4-armed scientist whose people had been studying the galaxy for 20,000 years. They had become good friends, despite their very different backgrounds. Elena, Kethmora said, floating over with a concerned expression. We are receiving strange signals from the deep space monitoring stations. Would you like to see them? Elena pushed off from her workbench and drifted over to the main console. On the screen, she saw wave patterns unlike anything in her experience. They were powerful, organized, but completely alien. "What do you think they are?" Elena asked. "We do not know," Kethmora replied, his four hands dancing over the controls. "The patterns are not like any known species. They appear to be some kind of scanning signals, but much stronger than anything we use." Elena studied the data more carefully. "These signals are coming from outside the galaxy's edge. That's unexplored space." "Yes, and they are moving inward," Kethmora said. "The signals started 3 days ago at the very edge of our sensor range. Now they are much closer." The ship's captain, a wise old being that looked like a walking crystal, announced over the communication system, "All senior scientists report to the main laboratory. We have received urgent orders from the Council." In the main lab, Elena found herself surrounded by the best scientists in the galaxy. There were beings who could live for thousands of years, and had studied the universe longer than human civilization had existed. "The Outer Rim colonies have gone silent," the captain announced. 7 systems, all in the same region where we detected the strange signals. Council investigation fleets are being sent to find out what happened. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Even with her limited experience, she knew that entire star systems didn't just go quiet without reason. 2 days later, the first reports came back from the investigation fleets. Elena was in the laboratory when the emergency broadcast began. The main screen showed Admiral Vorthak, a respected Council military leader, looking shaken and afraid. "Council Command, this is Admiral Vorthak of Investigation Fleet 7. We have arrived at the Kepler system. The planets are gone." Elena stared at the screen. "What do you mean, gone?" The Admiral continued. "Not destroyed. Stripped completely. Bare. There is no life, no atmosphere, no water. Even the metals have been removed from the planetary cores. It is as if something consumed everything." More reports came in over the following hours. System after system had been found in the same condition. Entire worlds had been stripped of all matter, leaving behind only empty rock cores floating in space. Elena worked with the other scientists to analyze the data. What they found was terrifying. Whatever had done this was methodical and efficient. They had taken everything that could be useful and left nothing behind. "Look at these scans," Elena said to Kethmora, pointing at her screen. "The removal pattern suggests some kind of massive industrial process, but no known species has technology like this." Kethmora's skin changed to a darker color, which Elena had learned meant he was afraid. "The elders are calling an emergency. Council session. They want all research data immediately." The emergency session was broadcast throughout the galaxy. Elena watched from the ship's common room alongside hundreds of other beings. The council chamber was full of worried aliens, their usual calm completely gone. Ambassador Zethkalar, who had welcomed humanity to the council, stood at the central podium. "Fellow council members, we face a threat unlike any in our recorded history. The entities responsible for these attacks have been designated as devourers based on their apparent consumption of all matter." The holographic display showed tactical information about the attacking force. Elena gasped when she saw the size estimates. The devourer ships were enormous, some larger than Earth's moon, and there were hundreds of them. "Our military analysts believe the devourers are some kind of biomechanical species," Zethkalar continued. "They appear to consume organic and inorganic matter alike, converting it into more of themselves." A representative from the warrior caste of the Kelhari stood up. "What of our defenses? Surely our fleets can stop these creatures." The display changed to show battle reports. Elena watched in horror as council ships engaged the devourers. The aliens' energy weapons struck the biomechanical hulls and did almost nothing. The devourers' own weapons were devastatingly effective, tearing through council shields like paper. "Our energy-based weapon systems are proving ineffective against their adaptive bioarmor," Admiral Vorthak reported from the front lines. "They learn from each attack and modify their defenses accordingly." Elena watched as council fleets, designed for peacekeeping and exploration, were systematically destroyed. The aliens had been peaceful for so long that they had forgotten how to fight a real war. Furthermore, the admiral continued, their tactics are completely unpredictable. They do not respond to attempts at communication. They show no interest in negotiation or surrender terms. They simply attack and consume. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Representatives from dozens of species began shouting at once. Elena had never seen the usually calm council in such chaos. Zeth Kalar called for order. Please, we must remain calm. Our scientists are working to find a solution. But Elena could see the truth in the data. The council's technology was advanced, but peaceful. Their weapons were designed to disable, not destroy. Their tactics were based on thousands of years of diplomatic solutions. They simply had no experience fighting an enemy that could not be reasoned with. Over the following weeks, the situation grew worse. The Devourers moved steadily inward, consuming system after system. Refugee ships began arriving at council stations, filled with survivors who had escaped just in time. Elena interviewed some of the refugees, hoping to learn more about the enemy. A young Kelhari female, barely more than a child, described the attack on her home world. They came from space in huge ships that looked alive, she said, her voice shaking. They landed on our planet and began eating everything, not just plants and animals, but buildings, vehicles, even the ground itself. My parents put me on the last transport ship. I watched our world disappear as we flew away. The pattern was always the same. The Devourers would arrive, land their biomechanical units on planets, and begin systematic consumption. They worked with terrifying efficiency, stripping worlds bare in a matter of days. Elena spent her time analyzing Devourer technology, looking for weaknesses. What she found was disturbing. Kethmora, look at this, she said, showing him her latest data. Their bioarmor doesn't just adapt to energy weapons. It actually gets stronger from each attack. That is impossible, Kethmora replied, but his skin color showed he was worried. No, it's not impossible. It's just really, really advanced, Elena said. They're using the energy from our weapons to improve their defenses. Our attacks are literally making them stronger. Meanwhile, Council fleets continued to suffer defeats. Their ships were designed for exploration and peaceful contact, not warfare. When they tried to fight the Devourers, they lost badly every time. Elena watched the tactical reports with growing concern. The aliens had been peaceful for so long that they had lost the ability to think like warriors. They sent their ships in neat formations, used predictable attack patterns, and followed rules of engagement that the Devourers completely ignored. We need a different approach, Elena told Kethmora during one of their research sessions. The Council's tactics aren't working. What do you suggest? He asked. Elena hesitated. What she was thinking would sound terrible to the peaceful aliens. We need to think like humans would think. Dirty, unpredictable, willing to do anything to win. Kethmora's skin turned pale. That sounds very dangerous. Maybe, Elena said. But the alternative is watching the Devourers eat the entire galaxy. As reports continued to come in of Council defeats, Elena began to understand something important. The galaxy had been peaceful for so long that most species had forgotten what real war looked like. They thought in terms of honorable combat and fair play, but the Devourers didn't care about honor or fairness. They only cared about consuming everything in their path. And against an enemy like that, maybe the galaxy needed someone who understood how to fight dirty. Elena thought about Earth and its long history of warfare. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years, learning hard lessons about survival and victory. The Council had seen this as a weakness, but Elena was beginning to think it might be exactly what was needed. She just hoped the Council would realize it before it was too late. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any meeting in 50,000 years. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the Great Chamber, but instead of their usual calm discussions, there was panic and desperation. The Devourers had consumed 47 star systems in just 2 months, and the Council's fleets could not stop them. Ambassador Zeth Kalar stood at the central podium, his pale blue skin even paler than usual. Fellow Council members, our situation is critical. Our fleets have suffered catastrophic losses. At current rates, the Devourers will reach the core worlds within 6 months. The chamber buzzed with frightened voices. Some representatives were already talking about evacuating their home worlds. Others suggested trying to negotiate with the Devourers even though all attempts at communication had failed. "What about the humans?" called out a voice from the upper galleries. The chamber fell silent. Elena Vasquez, watching from the observation deck of the research ship, felt every alien eye looking toward the small human delegation. Captain Sarah Chen stood up from her seat. She looked older and more tired than when Elena had first met her months ago. The stress of watching the galaxy burn while humanity sat on the sidelines had taken its toll. "The humans are bound by the Behavioral Compliance Accords," Zethkalar replied. "Their military capabilities are limited to defensive operations only." "But what if we remove those limitations?" asked Admiral Vorthak, his voice desperate. "The humans have experience with warfare. Their weapons are different from ours." A wave of shocked murmurs went through the chamber. The idea of unleashing humanity's military power terrified many of the peaceful species. An elderly representative from the Seraphim Coalition stood up. His people had been peaceful for 12,000 years. "You suggest we release predators to fight monsters? How do we know the humans won't become as dangerous as the Devourers?" Sarah Chen walked to the central platform. Her voice was steady and calm, despite the weight of the moment. "Because we're not monsters," she said. "Yes, we fight. Yes, we have weapons. But we fight to protect, not to destroy. We fight so that others don't have to. Your species has killed billions of your own kind," accused another representative. "Yes," Sarah admitted. "And we learned from those mistakes. We learned when to fight and when to make peace. We learned how to work together against common threats. The Devourers are a common threat to all of us." Admiral Vorthak activated a holographic display showing the latest battle reports. "Our energy weapons are completely ineffective against Devourer bioarmor, but preliminary analysis suggests that kinetic weapons might work better." Elena smiled slightly. She had sent those analysis reports to the Admiral. Kinetic weapons, bullets, missiles, railguns, were crude by Council standards, but they might be exactly what was needed. The debate raged for hours. Some species wanted to try negotiation or retreat. Others suggested waiting for a technological breakthrough, but as each hour passed, more reports came in of worlds under attack. Finally, Zethkalar called for a vote. All those in favor of suspending the Behavioral Compliance Accords and requesting human military assistance? Elena watched as representatives across the chamber made their decisions. Some voted immediately, while others hesitated for long moments. The final tally was close. 423 species in favor, 398 opposed with 26 abstentions. "The motion passes," Zethkalar announced. "May whatever gods you believe in forgive us all." Within hours, Sarah Chen was aboard a fast courier ship heading for Earth. Elena volunteered to go with her, eager to see her home world again and help with the mobilization. The journey to Earth took 3 days. During the trip, Sarah explained what would happen next. "We'll need to move fast. The Devourers aren't going to wait while we build ships and train soldiers." "What about the other humans serving with the Council?" Elena asked. "There are about 50 of us scattered across different ships and stations." "Admiral Rivera wants all human personnel to report for duty immediately," Sarah replied. "Your research on Devourer technology will be crucial." When they arrived at Earth, Elena was amazed by what she saw. The planet looked completely different from when she had left. Orbital shipyards that had been empty before were now buzzing with construction activity. New military bases were being built on the Moon and Mars. The entire human civilization had shifted into what they called war footing. Admiral Marcus Rivera met them at the Luna Command Center. He was a big man with gray hair and scars from humanity's last major conflict 20 years ago. Elena had heard stories about him. He was brilliant, but ruthless, the kind of leader who made hard decisions without hesitation. "Captain Chen, Dr. Vasquez, welcome home," he said. "We've been preparing for this possibility since you first reported on Council military doctrine. Frankly, we expected something like this would happen eventually." Elena was surprised. You expected an alien invasion? We expected that a galaxy full of peaceful species would eventually encounter something they couldn't handle diplomatically, Rivera explained. 50,000 years of peace makes people soft. When real trouble comes, they need someone who remembers how to fight. The Admiral led them through the command center, showing them tactical displays and production reports. Elena was impressed by the scale of the mobilization. Humanity had only been in space for a few years, but they were building ships and weapons at an incredible rate. Our main advantages are mobility and firepower, Rivera explained. Council ships are designed for comfort and exploration. Ours are designed for war. We can move faster, hit harder, and take more damage. What about casualties? Sarah asked. Rivera's expression became grim. We'll take heavy losses. That's unavoidable. But humans are willing to accept casualties that would break other species. We've been doing it for thousands of years, Elena thought about the peaceful aliens she had worked with. The idea of losing even a few ships was traumatic for them. They might not understand humanity's willingness to sacrifice lives for victory. 2 weeks later, the first human battle fleet was ready. Elena stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, watching as 40 human warships prepared to jump to their first engagement. The ships looked nothing like the elegant council vessels. They were blocky, heavily armored, and covered with weapons. Admiral Rivera stood beside her, studying tactical displays. The Devourers are attacking the Proxima Centauri system. It's a heavily defended council stronghold with a population of 2 billion. What's our plan? Elena asked. Simple, Rivera replied. We're going to hit them with everything we have. Railguns, nuclear missiles, kinetic impactors, anything that can punch through bioarmor. We'll worry about subtlety later. The jump to Proxima Centauri took 6 hours. When they arrived, Elena saw the battle in progress. Council ships were fighting desperately against massive biomechanical constructs that looked like living nightmares. The Devourer vessels were winning easily, their adaptive armor shrugging off energy weapon attacks. All ships. This is Admiral Rivera. The communication system crackled. Target the largest Devourer vessels first. Use nuclear-tipped railgun rounds. Fire at will. Elena watched in fascination as human weapons opened fire. Instead of colorful energy beams, she saw streams of metal slugs moving at incredible speeds. When they hit the Devourer ships, the explosions were devastating. The bioarmor that had adapted to energy weapons was not prepared for simple kinetic impact. The railgun rounds punched straight through and the nuclear warheads detonated inside the enemy ships. It's working, Elena shouted. Their armor can't adapt fast enough to physical impact. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The Devourers fought back with weapons that tore human ships apart. Elena watched as the destroyer Courage was cut in half by some kind of energy beam. The cruiser Defiance rammed a Devourer vessel and detonated its nuclear arsenal, taking both ships out in a massive explosion. Sir, we've lost 14 ships, reported the tactical officer. Acceptable losses, Rivera replied coldly. Continue. The attack. Elena realized this was the difference between humans and council species. The aliens would have retreated after losing even one ship. But humans kept fighting, even when the casualties mounted. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it was over, the human fleet had destroyed the entire Devourer attack force, but only 26 human ships survived out of the original 40. 65% casualties, the tactical officer reported. Elena expected Rivera to be devastated by the losses. Instead, he seemed almost pleased. Not bad for our first engagement, he said. We learned a lot about how to fight these things. Next time will be easier. Elena stared at him. Easier? We lost more than half our ships. Rivera nodded. But we won. And now we know their weaknesses. The council species see those losses as a disaster. We see them as the price of victory. As the surviving human ships limped back toward Earth, Elena received reports from across the galaxy. News of the human victory had spread quickly. For the first time since the Devourer attacks began, there was hope. But Elena also noticed something else in the reports. The council species were amazed by human effectiveness. but they were also frightened by human casualties. They couldn't understand how humans could accept such losses and keep fighting. Elena realized that humanity had been unchained not just from the 6 months had passed since humanity entered the war against the Devourers. Elena Vasquez stood in the tactical center of the rebuilt Luna Command, watching data streams from battlefields across the galaxy. The numbers told an incredible story. Human forces had won 12 major engagements and saved over 30 star systems, but the cost had been enormous. Elena studied the casualty reports with a heavy heart. Of the original 200,000 human military personnel deployed, fewer than 80,000 remained. Any other species would have surrendered by now, but humanity kept fighting. Dr. Vasquez, report to Admiral Rivera's office, came the announcement over the communication system. Elena made her way through the bustling command center. The base had tripled in size since the war began, and construction crews worked around the clock to expand it further. Everywhere she looked, she saw humans preparing for war with grim determination. Admiral Rivera was studying holographic battle plans when she entered his office. He looked older and more tired than before, but his eyes still held the same fierce intelligence. "Elena, I need your analysis of the latest Devourer adaptations," he said without looking up. "They're learning from our attacks." Elena activated her portable display. "The bio-armor is evolving faster than we expected. They've developed countermeasures against railgun rounds in the past month. Nuclear weapons are still effective, but they're building thicker hulls. What do you recommend?" "We need to change tactics again. The Devourers expect us to attack with kinetic weapons now. We need to surprise them." Rivera finally looked at her. "What did you have in mind?" Elena pulled up her research files. "Boarding actions. Get inside their ships and attack from within. Their bio-armor is designed to stop external attacks, not internal ones." The Admiral raised an eyebrow. "Boarding actions against ships the size of cities? That's insane." "Yes," Elena agreed. "That's why it might work." 3 days later, Elena found herself suiting up for the most dangerous mission of her life. She was part of a 50-person boarding team preparing to assault a Devourer command ship in the Vega system. The plan was simple and completely crazy. Ram a specially modified human ship into the enemy vessel, then fight their way to the central control systems. Colonel Sarah Chen, now wearing military armor instead of diplomatic clothes, checked Elena's equipment one final time. Sarah had volunteered to lead the mission personally, despite Admiral Rivera's objections. "Remember, once we're inside, we have maybe 30 minutes before the ship's immune system adapts to us," Sarah said. "We need to plant the virus and get out fast." The virus was Elena's creation, a computer program designed to disrupt the biomechanical systems that controlled Devourer ships. It was based on her months of studying captured Devourer technology, combined with human computer science. "Are you sure this will work?" asked Lieutenant Morrison, who had served as Elena's assistant during the diplomatic mission years ago. "No," Elena admitted, "but it's the best chance we have." The boarding ship Spear of Terra was essentially a giant missile with a crew compartment. It had been designed to punch through enemy hulls and deliver soldiers directly into hostile ships. Elena tried not to think about how many things could go wrong with this plan. 5 minutes to impact," announced the pilot. "Everyone hold on." Elena gripped her restraints as the ship accelerated toward the massive Devourer vessel. Through the small viewports, she could see the enemy ship growing larger and larger. It looked like a living nightmare, part machine, part organism, covered with weapon pods and sensor arrays. The impact was tremendous. Elena felt like she was inside a giant bell being struck by a hammer. Emergency lights flickered, and she heard the sound of metal tearing as the boarding ship carved its way deep into the enemy hull. "We're in," Sarah shouted. "Move! Move! Move!" Elena stumbled out of the boarding ship and found herself inside an alien nightmare. The Devourer ship's interior was organic-looking, with walls that pulsed like living tissue. Strange lights flickered in patterns that hurt to look at, and the air was filled with a low humming that seemed to vibrate in her bones. The boarding team moved quickly through the ship's corridors, following Elena's best guess about where the central computer systems might be. They encountered resistance almost immediately. biomechanical defenders that looked like cross between machines and insects. Human weapons proved effective in close combat. The defenders were designed to fight, energy weapons and kinetic rounds, not point-blank shotgun blasts and explosive charges. Helena watched her companions fight with a combination of high-tech equipment and brutal close-quarters tactics that would have horrified the peaceful council species. "This way," Helena shouted, following her sensor readings toward what she hoped was the ship's brain. The corridors were getting stranger as they went deeper, with walls that moved and floors that felt alive under their feet. They found the central control system in a vast chamber that looked like the inside of a giant organism. Nerve-like cables ran everywhere, pulsing with bioluminescent light. In the center was something that might have been a computer or might have been a living brain. Helena couldn't tell the difference. "There," she pointed. "That's where we need to plant the virus." Sarah and her soldiers set up a defensive perimeter while Helena worked. The virus had to be installed directly into the biomechanical systems, which meant she had to physically connect her equipment to what looked like alien nerve tissue. The process was disgusting and terrifying. The ship seemed to sense what she was doing and began trying to fight back. The walls started closing in and hostile organisms began emerging from openings in the floor. "Helena, whatever you're doing, do it faster," Sarah shouted, firing at something that looked like a mechanical spider the size of a person. "Almost there," Helena replied, forcing herself to focus despite the chaos around her. The virus was uploading, but slowly, too slowly. Then the ship's immune system found them. Helena watched in horror as the air itself seemed to become hostile, filling with microscopic organisms that attacked anything human-made. Her suit's filters began working overtime and warning lights flashed on her helmet display. "That's it, we're done," Helena announced, yanking her equipment free. "Everyone out now!" The retreat was a nightmare. The ship was actively trying to kill them now, and the corridors were changing shape to trap them. Helena saw 3 soldiers consumed by something that looked like living metal. Another was crushed when a wall suddenly closed. They made it back to the boarding ship with less than half their original team. As they launched back toward the human fleet, Helena looked back at the Devourer vessel. For a moment, nothing seemed different. Then the enemy ship began to convulse. Lights flickered randomly across its hull and weapon systems fired in all directions. The virus was working, disrupting the biomechanical systems that controlled the massive vessel. "It's working," Helena shouted. "The ship's losing control." The Devourer command vessel slowly began to drift, its weapons offline and its systems failing. The other human ships moved in quickly, destroying the helpless enemy with concentrated fire. But Helena's victory was short-lived. Within hours, reports came in that the Devourers had already adapted to the virus. The attack had worked once, but it wouldn't work again. This became the pattern of the war. Humans would develop a new tactic or weapon, use it successfully for a few battles, then watch as the Devourers adapted and overcame it. Each victory required a completely new approach. Helena worked with teams of human scientists and engineers to stay ahead of the enemy's adaptations. They developed self-destructing ships that could ram enemy vessels and detonate nuclear weapons inside them. They created computer viruses that could spread through Devourer communications networks. They even experimented with biological weapons, designed to attack the organic components of enemy ships. Most importantly, they learned to fight in ways that the galaxy had never seen before. Human tactics were unpredictable, brutal, and effective. They used strategies that other species would consider dishonorable or insane. When conventional weapons failed, humans loaded their ships with explosives and rammed them into enemy vessels. When supplies ran low, they scavenged parts from destroyed ships, both human and alien. When facing impossible odds, they fought anyway because surrender was not an option. Helena watched reports from battles across the galaxy. At the Battle of Wolf 359, Captain Martinez sacrificed his entire squadron to destroy a Devourer fleet, ramming his damaged cruiser into the enemy flagship at full speed. At the Siege of Kepler 442, Major Thompson's ground forces held off Devourer landing craft for 6 days, using nothing but improvised explosives and captured enemy weapons. The casualty rates were staggering by Council standards. Human units regularly suffered 70% losses and continued fighting. Entire fleets were destroyed in single battles, only to be replaced by new ships and crews within weeks. But the strategy was working. For the first time since the war began, the Devourer advance had been stopped. Human tactics were so unpredictable that the enemy couldn't adapt fast enough to counter them all. Elena received reports from Council observers attached to human fleets. The aliens were amazed by human effectiveness but horrified by human methods. They couldn't understand how soldiers could keep fighting after. Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching as the human fleet prepared for its final mission. Every surviving ship in the human navy was here. 847 vessels ranging from massive battleships to small destroyers. It was everything humanity had left after 2 years of brutal warfare against the Devourers. Admiral Rivera looked older than his years as he addressed the fleet commanders over the communication system. His voice was steady, but Elena could see the weight of command in his eyes. "This is it," he said simply. "We're going to the Devourer home system. Intelligence suggests their central hive mind is located there. If we can destroy it, their scattered fleets will lose coordination and become vulnerable." Elena studied the tactical display showing their target. The Andromeda system was heavily defended by thousands of Devourer ships and orbital fortifications. It was, without question, a suicide mission. "I won't lie to you," Rivera continued. "Most of us won't be coming home. But if we succeed, the galaxy survives. If we fail, everything ends anyway. The choice is simple." Elena looked around the bridge, at the human crew members. They were young and old from dozens of different countries and backgrounds. Many had lost friends and family in previous battles, but none of them looked afraid. They looked determined. "Sir," called out the navigation officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council." Ambassador Zeth Kalar appeared on the main screen, looking frailer than Elena remembered. The past 2 years had been hard on everyone. "Admiral Rivera," Zeth Kalar said, "the Council wishes to express our gratitude for humanity's sacrifice. Your species has already given more than anyone could have asked." "With respect, Ambassador," Rivera replied, "we're not done giving yet." "You have saved 43 star systems and billions of lives," Zeth Kalar continued. "Perhaps it is time to consider a defensive strategy. Protect what we have left." Rivera's expression hardened. "That's not how humans think, Ambassador. We don't just hold the line. We push forward until the enemy is defeated completely." Elena could see the confusion in the alien ambassador's eyes. Even after 2 years of watching humans fight, the peaceful species of the Council still couldn't understand humanity's approach to warfare. The fleet jumped to hyperspace 6 hours later. The journey to the Andromeda system took 2 days, during which Elena worked frantically on last-minute preparations. She had developed a new computer virus specifically designed to attack the Devourer hive mind, but it would need to be delivered directly to their central command structure. When they emerged from hyperspace, Elena gasped at what she saw. The Andromeda system was a fortress beyond imagination. Hundreds of massive Devourer ships orbited the main planet, while the planet itself was covered with biomechanical structures that stretched into space like metallic roots. "Jesus," whispered Lieutenant Morrison, who had somehow survived 2 years of the deadliest war in galactic history. "How are we supposed to fight that?" "The same way we've fought everything else," Rivera replied. "With everything we have." The battle began immediately. Devourer ships moved to intercept the human fleet and space erupted in violence. Elena watched as human vessels unleashed their weapons: railguns, nuclear missiles, particle beams, and kinetic impactors. The enemy responded with biomechanical weapons that tore through space itself. But this time was different. After 2 years of fighting, the humans had learned to coordinate their attacks perfectly. Squadrons of destroyers would distract enemy ships while heavy cruisers moved in for killing blows. Damaged vessels would ram enemy ships rather than retreat. Fighter craft dove into the massive Devourer hulls like angry wasps, planting explosives before being destroyed. Elena monitored the battle from her station, coordinating sensor data and electronic warfare systems. She watched human ships die by the dozens, but also saw enemy vessels falling to human weapons. The Devourers had adapted to many human tactics, but they couldn't adapt to pure determination and willingness to sacrifice. "Ma'am," reported the tactical officer, "we've lost 60% of the fleet, but we're breaking through their outer defenses." Elena looked at the display. It was true. The surviving human ships were fighting their way toward the main planet, leaving a trail of wreckage behind them. The cost was horrific, but they were winning. "Admiral," Elena called out, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. I think we've found the hive mind." Rivera studied the data. "How do we get to it?" "The only way is a direct assault on the planet," Elena replied. "We'll need to fight through their orbital defenses and land troops on the surface." "Do it," Rivera ordered. "All ships, prepare for planetary assault." Elena watched as the remaining human vessels, fewer than 200 now, descended toward the hostile planet. The surface was a nightmare landscape of biomechanical structures and defensive systems. As they approached, the planet itself seemed to come alive, launching attacks from hidden weapon systems. More ships fell during the descent. Elena saw the battleship Courage consumed by some kind of energy weapon that erupted from the planet's crust. The cruiser Defiance crash-landed but continued firing its weapons until the hull finally exploded. The Indomitable made it to the surface, but barely. Half the ship was destroyed during landing, and most of the crew was dead or injured. Elena found herself in command of the science team as they prepared to assault the hive mind structure. Admiral Rivera, wounded but still functional, led the final assault team. Elena went with them, carrying her virus and the equipment needed to deploy. They had maybe 100 soldiers left from the entire invasion force. The hive mind structure was massive, a biomechanical complex that stretched for kilometers in every direction. As they approached, Elena could feel something pressing against her thoughts, like a vast intelligence trying to understand what humans were. "It knows we're here," she told Rivera. "Good," the Admiral replied. "Let it know what humanity thinks about being conquered." The assault was the most intense fighting Elena had ever seen. The structure was defended by biomechanical creatures that seemed designed specifically to kill humans, but the surviving soldiers fought with desperate courage, knowing this was their last chance. Elena fought alongside them, using a plasma rifle she had barely been trained to operate. She watched Rivera personally lead charges against enemy positions, somehow surviving wounds that should have killed him. She saw soldiers sacrifice themselves to create openings for their comrades, never hesitating when victory required their lives. They reached the central chamber after an hour of brutal combat. Elena found herself standing before the Devourer hive mind, a massive organic computer that pulsed with alien intelligence. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Do it," Rivera ordered, blood running down his face from multiple wounds. Elena connected her equipment to the hive mind structure, trying not to think about the fact that she was touching something that had ordered the deaths of billions. The virus began uploading, but slowly, too slowly. The structure began to fight back, sending biomechanical defenders after the remaining humans. Elena watched Rivera and his soldiers make their last stand, holding off impossible numbers of enemies to buy her time to complete the upload. "Elena!" Rivera shouted over the sound of weapons fire. "How much longer?" 30 seconds, she replied, watching the upload progress creep forward. She watched Rivera go down, overwhelmed by enemy attackers. Then Morrison fell, still firing his weapon. One by one, the last human soldiers died protecting her as she worked. With 10 seconds left on the upload, Elena realized she was alone. The chamber was full of biomechanical creatures, all moving toward her. She drew her sidearm and prepared to make humanity's final stand. Then the upload completed. The effect was immediate and devastating. The hive mind structure began to convulse as the virus spread through its systems. The biomechanical defenders suddenly stopped attacking, confusion replacing their coordinated intelligence. Elena felt the vast alien mind that had pressed against her thoughts suddenly fragment and collapse. Without the hive mind's coordination, the Devourer forces across the galaxy would become disorganized and vulnerable. She activated her emergency beacon and waited. Either human reinforcements would arrive, or she would die here among the wreckage of humanity's greatest victory. 3 hours later, she heard human voices calling her name. A rescue team from one of the surviving ships had fought their way through the collapsing structure to find her. The journey back to Earth took weeks. Elena spent most of it in the medical bay, recovering from injuries and exhaustion. But she also spent time studying the reports that came in from across the galaxy. The virus had worked perfectly. With their central coordination destroyed, the scattered devourer fleets were being systematically defeated by Council forces. Species that had been helpless against the organized invasion were now able to fight back effectively against confused and uncoordinated enemies. But the cost to humanity had been enormous. Of the 847 ships that had participated in the final assault, only 23 survived. Admiral Rivera was dead, along with most of humanity's military leadership. The human fleet, which had once numbered in the thousands, was reduced to a few hundred vessels. When Elena finally reached Earth, she found a world in mourning. Every